Okay, so this is our last topic for in the syllabus. Okay, chapter number 14. Okay, so and this Thursday we will do maybe some revision to prepare for your last test. Okay, test number 4, which is on Saturday. I mean the official time has not been released yet, but based on the discussion uh, I had with the coordinator, so it will be on the same time, 3:30 to 5. Okay, on the remaining topics of your syllabus, topic number 11 to 14. Okay, so that will be uh, the coverage, okay, for test 4. Okay, so it still contribute 25% to your carry mark. Okay, so it's a lot of marks in for test 4 as well. Okay, so for the last topic, okay, on the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Okay, so for this we will use the annual slide, okay, which the one the only slide which I upload in your OL. Okay, so again, although there's a lot of uh, materials, okay, in the slide, okay, but I will just focus, maybe we just go through briefly on the slides, and perhaps this coming Thursday, okay, hopefully when we do the discussion, okay, so we can I can highlight, okay, the important stuff, okay, because there's a lot to cover actually if you go through the actual syllabus, okay, but due to the uh, nature of your test, which is just based on multiple choice, okay, MCQ, so you just need to know on the important stuff only. So for the last chapter, okay, so if you uh, go back to the syllabus, okay, the one that we that you have in your OL, okay, for just going through quickly here, okay, in the last for your test number 4, okay, so your test 3 we cover topic 8, 9 and 10, okay, for the introduction of macro, GDP, and then the national equilibrium. Okay, for the last test, it will be on the money supply function, definition of money, and then the central bank function, which is quite short. This is, I think, one of the shortest topic, okay, in your syllabus. And then we have the money market, also not that much, okay, in terms of the content. So 11, 12, and 13, and then finally 14. So basically 14 is just a continuation from the previous topic, okay, on the demand, on the previous 2 topics. Basically, actually it starts from, it relates with the national income equilibrium, okay, because on topic number 10 you already learned on the aggregate on the national equilibrium, okay, especially focusing on the aggregate demand component, okay, which is the C plus I plus G plus X minus M, the expenditure approach, the income approach. Okay, so basically topic number 14 wraps up, okay, in terms of the equilibrium concept as well, okay, on the macroeconomic equilibrium. So combining the demand and also the supply. Okay, so this is basically what chapter 14 is. Okay, so just a continuation from the previous 4 topics. Okay, so again, the focus, since we so the focus is divided according to 2 parts, okay, the demand and also on the supply, okay, because we are focusing on both demand and supply. Okay, so let's go through okay, what on the aggregate demand. So we already learned this in the aggregate demand in the expenditure approach. We have the C, consumption, investment, government expenditure, and the net trade or export minus M. Okay, so this is you already learned this in your chapter 10 previously. Aggregate demand, which is using the expenditure approach. Okay, that's why this part here, expenditure. And then there are some assumptions which we don't discuss previously, but some of the assumption is that the price is not constant, which is because price do change according to the inflation or CPI measure, and interest rate is also not constant. Okay, so once you when we learn on the aggregate expenditure, aggregate the AE, okay, the expenditure approach, the income approach, or the production approach. Those three methods to calculate the AE, aggregate expenditure. Okay, so basically the what aggregate demand. So in one country, for you to achieve equilibrium, just like in the microeconomic topic, okay, in the chapter 2 or chapter 3 in your syllabus, equilibrium is achieved when demand equal to supply. Okay, but the word aggregate means, okay, rather than just demand and supply, because we are talking about the whole country. Okay, so for aggregate demand, okay, just is still downward sloping, but is the demand is referring to GDP, okay, and not nominal GDP, but real GDP, because the calculation of GDP is based on real price, okay, taking into account inflation at different price level Y, okay, ceteris paribus. Okay, so this is a very important concept here at every price level. Okay, and each point on the curve represent the short run equilibrium. Okay, so when you look at the aggregate demand point, okay, so aggregate demand curve is so the quantity here. So if you recall from in your macroeconomic syllabus, demand and supply. Okay, the y-axis is still the price level, which is the same. Okay, the x is the quantity, but now even though we put q, but this quantity is referring to the amount of the quantity of GDP. Okay, but so at every point on the curve reflects the short run equilibrium. So we have short run and long run period. In economy, we divide according to these two time frame: short run versus long run. Short run is usually the time frame in the economy, which is usually less than 1 year. Okay, 1 year period. So that is short run period. Long run usually more than 1 year. Okay, so it's the same thing what you saw. Okay, but instead of using P and Q, usually we refer to Y. Okay, Y means the aggregate. Y means the GDP. Okay, when price decrease, your GDP goes up. Okay, and vice versa. Okay, so the quantity here usually we refer to income, the value of GDP. Okay. Okay, so these assumptions here, why does aggregate demand curve slope downward? Okay, so this is, we will not go through in detail, okay, because to discuss every item of this requires a very long discussion. Okay, the real balance effect, interest rate effect, okay, international trade effect. So international trade means export minus import. Okay, interest rate effect, you learn this in your in chapter 10 and also 11, okay, on the money demand, on the aggregate expenditure, okay, the determination of interest rate as well. Okay, so this is so the next few slides will just be talking about these three factors. Okay, why does the AD slope downward? Okay, the real balance effect. Basically, we are talking about the purchasing power. Okay, purchasing power means your ability to how much you can buy using the same amount of money. Okay, so if you take $100 today versus $100 maybe 10 years ago, okay, how much you can buy with the same amount of money today compared to how much you can buy with the same $100 maybe 10 years ago. Okay, so and the difference in the quantity of good that you can buy is due to the inflation level, okay, the changes in the price. Okay, so lately, people are talking that about the price of onion, the price of cooking oil has gone up, okay, especially during this COVID lockdown period, okay. So meaning that with the same amount of money, you can buy less quantity, okay, of the same good, okay. So that is talking about purchasing power. So the change in the price level, okay, other things remain the same or ceteris paribus. Okay, so it changed the value of your wealth, okay, your ability to buy lah. Okay, so if because we're talking about the real balance effect or the change in the price level. So when price rises, okay, purchasing power falls. Okay, so quantity demanded of the GDP will also fall because at the beginning we talk about measuring AD from this expenditure approach, C plus I plus G. So basically, and this assumption that price is not constant. So whenever the price changes, so this is just like your demand and supply assumption. So when price increase, but because we're talking from the perspective of the whole economy, we talk about purchasing power, okay, your ability to buy, okay, as a whole country. So your wealth or your ability to buy reduce, so the demand fall, and vice versa. When the price decrease, you can buy more of the same amount of money, so GDP will increase. Okay, so here is just the same movement, okay, going downward or upward. So when you talk about the real balance effect, you're talking about the purchasing power, the ability to buy, or the effect on your wealth. Okay, so that is on the real balance. So we have three factors: real balance, interest rate, and international trade. So for interest rate effect, okay, this is related to what you learned before in the money demand and money supply. Okay, interest rate effect through changes in household and business spending that is sensitive to changes in interest rate. Okay, so if you recall in the previous chapter on money demand, okay, your money demand is also downward sloping based on interest rate. When interest rate is high, your money demand is low. Okay, because when interest rate is high, you prefer to put your money in saving. Okay, you put your money in bank, or you buy stock, you buy government bond. So money demand less because you don't use that much of money. You prefer to keep the money in your deposit account to get dividend. But when interest rate is low, okay, you prefer to use the money for shopping, okay, to buy goods and services, because when interest rate is low, if you put money in bank, if you put your money in some investment account, you will not get much of dividend or return. So that's why you tend to spend more when interest rate is low. So it's the same thing here. When interest rate is low, when interest rate rises, people borrow and spend less. Okay, so GDP. So meaning this is also related to money demand lah. When interest rate is high, money demand is low. Okay, so if you recall from the previous chapter, okay, just to see whether you can see the connection between money demand. So we learned this last week. Okay. Okay, so you look at this money demand and money, okay, the demand for money. Okay, so when interest rate is high, money demand is low. Okay, when interest rate is low, money demand will increase. So money demand means the demand for money to put money in your wallet, okay, in your e-wallet or in your purse, okay, in terms of the coin and notes lah. So money demand is high when interest rate is low, because when interest rate is low, you can use your credit card, because you can borrow money from bank, because you need to pay less amount of interest. Okay, so this is what it means by the interest rate effect. So when interest rate is high, okay, when interest rate is high, money demand will fall, meaning you prefer to put the money in bank or in investment account to get dividend. Okay, so or you buy government bond, for example. So we discussed about that also. So when when interest rate is high, people borrow and spend less, okay, or money demand fall. So the quantity of GDP will also decrease. So this is what you need to understand, okay? No need to get confused with this equation here, okay? As long as you understand the concept of why when interest rate is high, the effect of GDP will fall because money demand will also fall. So vice versa, when interest rate is low, people borrow more, so GDP will increase. Okay, so this is what you learn. So no need to get too afraid of. You learn all of this before. Okay, and on the aggregate expenditure curve in chapter number 11 or 10, on chapter 11. Okay, so the interest rate effect is basically just to, so this curve you also learned before. Okay, money supply is constant, okay, or perfectly inelastic, okay, but interest rate, so when money demand shift upward, okay, for example due to increase in your income, so we already learned this, okay, how does your money demand can shift upward, okay, from MO to MD1, okay, for example increase in income. Okay, so if you forgot, meaning you're not done your revision yet. So so money demand can shift upward. Okay, so the same thing here, money demand shift upward. Okay, perhaps due to increase in your income. Okay, or so when money demand shift upward, you can see interest rate will also increase 6 to 9%. So the same thing here, interest rate increase from 7 to 14%. Okay, raises the interest rate. So it's just a continuation on from the previous one. So when interest rate goes up, okay, you can see that the aggregate expenditure will fall. Okay, from AE, from this line drop to the second line here. Okay, because interest rate goes up. Okay, the overall expenditure, the total expenditure will fall. Okay, so that is the effect, and then the quantity will drop from 10 to 6. Okay, and then and when you relate this graph, okay, into the price versus GDP, okay, just like in this early graph here, okay, you plot the price against quantity, the amount of GDP or the quantity of GDP. Okay, so it's the same thing here. So this is step number 1, step number 2, and finally step number 3. So first we start by money demand increase, that cause interest rate to go up. Okay, when interest rate goes up, okay, as the interest rate effect, interest rate goes up, the GDP will fall. Okay, because people will tend to borrow less. So this is shown by your aggregate expenditure line, drop from this first line to the second line here, because it shows the drop in your aggregate expenditure. Okay, AE goes down. So when AE goes down, your quantity of GDP drop from 10 to 6. So 6 and 10 here is the same number, but this one you relate you look at this relationship between the price level and also the amount of GDP. So the price level is, I mean, of course, the price is not shown here, okay, but because GDP when money demand increase, okay, so that cause AE to fall. So and your GDP will also drop, okay, from 10 to 6, okay, and this is shown by the relationship with the price, which the price level goes up. So price level goes up. This has got to do with the overall. I mean, it start with the increase in money demand first. Okay, when money demand increase, people start to spend more. Okay, so the effect is also that will cause the price level to go up also lah. Okay, so as long as you understand what is interest rate effect on this part here, okay, when interest rate goes up, what happens to GDP? When interest rate goes down, okay, what happens to GDP? That should be fine. Okay, and then it's the same. Okay, and then thirdly, you have this the international trade effect. Okay, basically you're looking at the export and import. Okay, so the interest rate effect or the international trade effect. Okay, so you're talking about the basically similar to the first one. Okay, price level in US for relative to foreign price level. Okay, so because this slide is based on the US textbook, so the US is like Malaysia. Okay, the home country. Okay, so when we talk about aggregate demand and aggregate supply effect, especially on aggregate demand, okay, when you do trade with other country, okay, export and import, okay, how much you want to buy imported items in Malaysia, okay, for example, how much do you want to buy goods from China, goods from US, goods from UK, okay, European countries that come to Malaysia. It depends on, and if the same product can also be produced in Malaysia, meaning different brand, but one is made in Malaysia, and maybe other item is the brand which is made in the UK. Okay, but both are similar in terms of the function. Okay, for example, just like car. Okay, we have the Malaysian made car, Malaysian brand like Pro 2 and also Proton, versus the imported cars from Japan, okay, from US and whatnot. Okay, so and this got to do with also the price level. We're talking about the price level. The price level in US fall relative to price level, meaning like if the price level in the home country fall, okay, so the US good becomes cheaper compared to the imported. So you're gonna buy more of American. Both Americans and foreigners buy more of the US good. So when you talk about the price level in US, meaning the inflation rate in the home country or in the US, or let's say in Malaysia, drops. So the prices of the inflation in Malaysia has fallen, okay, or reduced. So that makes the cost of producing the good becomes cheaper. Okay, so meaning like if you want to produce any good, okay, or any product in Malaysia, it will cost less. So and also when you export the product, also it will still become cheaper because of the inflation rate is low. Okay, so that will make both Americans and foreigners, okay, buy more of the US good if you're talking about from the American perspective. Okay, so when price level fall, it's the same thing here. P goes down, AD will go up. Okay, because when you talk about international trade effect, you're talking about goods that are exported, okay, and imported. Okay, so from the US perspective or from the Malaysian perspective, if you're talking about the price level in Malaysia becomes low. So for example, the government control the price of certain good, or it's just that, okay, during certain time of the year, let's say the price, the inflation rate in Malaysia is low. So the price level of when inflation is low, the input will also become cheaper. Input means, okay, if you want to produce a car, okay, the input for car will be steel, the rubber to produce tire, plastic, okay, and other things and other components. So that makes the cost to produce the car in Malaysia become cheaper. So that will increase the local demand for Malaysian car. And also when we export Malaysian car to overseas, Proton, let's say we export Proton to other countries, because of the low cost of production in Malaysia, that will make our car become cheaper also in the export in other countries. Okay, so that will make that will increase the demand of Malaysian car in the foreign countries, just like what this slide is lah. Okay, and vice versa. But when if inflation goes up, okay, price level increase, so that will make the cost to produce the good become expensive. Okay, so when price level goes up, people tend to buy less lah because our product becomes more expensive. Okay, so aggregate demand will fall. Okay, so and then here we're talking about movement along the curve. Okay, changes in quantity demanded. So if you recall, this is a very similar concept that what you learn in the demand and supply topic in chapter in the macroeconomic syllabus. Movement along the curve, we're talking about changes in quantity demanded. But if the graph shift upward or downward, okay, shift to the right or shift to the left, we're talking about change in demand. Okay, we're talking about change in so the term is different. Okay, if the movement is if the graph shift upward, okay, or shift downward, okay, so the term that we use is change in demand. Okay, but movement along the curve, we're talking about change in quantity demanded. Okay, so this is the concept that you learned previously in the microeconomic syllabus, which is what we see here again, but here in the form of GDP, okay, for the whole country aggregate demand. Okay, a change in quantity demanded of real GDP is the result of the change in the price level, because you're talking about what is happening on the graph itself. Change in quantity demanded mean movement along the curve. So this curve can only goes up or down based on if the factor is only due to the price level. Other than the price level, then that will cause the curve to shift upward or downward. Okay, but if the price level that change, then it refers to change in quantity demanded, just like in the demand and supply topic earlier. Okay, so when price goes down, okay, multiplier effect, GDP goes up. Okay, so this is just the process here. Price goes down, decrease in money demand, okay, and then interest rate goes down. You can see that, and then finally GDP goes up. So if you can just understand this concept, okay, what happens when price goes down and finally GDP goes up, the process in between here is this thing. So sometimes you may see this concept being applied, okay, or asked in your multiple choice. Okay, what happens when the price level goes down? Okay, that will cause the GDP to goes up. So what happened in between here? So this may be relevant to you in your MCQ test later on. Okay. So and then changes in aggregate demand. Okay, so this is just now I mentioned about the your aggregate demand can shift upward, okay, or downward. Okay, so this is if we skip straight to this slide here, okay, I don't want to discuss too much in detail. Just now we use the term change in quantity demanded, okay, which is movement along the curve. But the demand curve AD can also shift upward or shift downward. But that one we refer to change in demand or change in aggregate demand, because demand is for individual, aggregate demand, I mean in our context here, is for the whole country. So what can cause the AD to shift upward or shift downward? Okay, so the previous few slides here, we're talking about, okay, change in demand, meaning this can cause the demand curve to shift upward or to shift downward. So I don't want to discuss too much in detail. As long as you know the main factor, okay. For example, if this increase, what happened to AD? Does AD goes up or AD goes down? Okay, because during the non-COVID teaching method, okay, if you look at the past year's question, for final exam, you also have recently they have changed to structured questions, okay, or soalan struktur, okay, meaning that you need to draw a certain curve or you need to explain your answer in text. Okay, so these are quite relevant, okay, to explain how does, okay, the aggregate demand goes up or goes down, and you need to show in terms of the demand curve whether the demand curve goes up, shift upward, or it can cause your demand curve to shift downward. Okay, so these three main factors here, okay, expectations, fiscal policy, and monetary policy. Fiscal policy is government expenditure and tax. Monetary policy could be money supply, and then the world economy in general. For example, now during COVID-19, okay, the whole world is suffering because of the lockdown and the virus. So the economy is the demand for export or import is low, so this can also cause the demand to drop. Okay, so let's look quickly how does expectation of consumption and investment can cause the demand curve to shift upward or downward. Okay, consumption. Okay, changes in expected future income, interest rate. Okay, so if you expect that inflation to increase in the future, okay, for example, in COVID-19, okay, so let's say government will announce that, okay, I mean, now we already in some states, okay, we have this MCO, full MCO, meaning people movement will be limited and whatnot, okay. So perhaps we expect that the price to go up further because goods will become limited, okay, movement of goods between countries, between states, okay, will become more difficult. So people has less, maybe the movement of lorry lah, okay, will become more restricted. Okay, production become less because of factory shutdown, people got COVID and whatnot. So price tend to go up. Okay, that's what happened in the last few days. The price of cooking oil starts to go up. Okay, so if you expect that COVID-19 cases will become, okay, will be much higher in the next few days or the next few in the next week or so, hopefully it's not. But let's say we expect that the case will continue to go up or maintain around 3,000, 4,000 cases a day. So you expect that the price of goods will become more expensive in the future. Okay, so means that you want to buy more now. Okay, you want to buy more now to avoid the inflation, the price increase in the future. So if you expect price to increase, so you want to buy more today lah, because now today if you go to the shop, the price still remain the same. Okay, but because you feel that the price will tend to go up in the next week or so, so to avoid inflation or to avoid paying more, so you tend to buy more now lah. So if you buy more now because you expect there will be inflation in the future, inflation will increase. So you buy more today, AD will curve to the right. Meaning this is just like demand curve will shift to the right because you buy more today. Okay, so that is related to consumption. Okay, so when you expect price to increase, okay, so you need so consumption will go up because you want to avoid paying more. Okay, why pay more next week when you can buy for a cheaper price today? Okay, so when you expect price to go up, you tend to buy more now. When you buy more now, AD go up, okay, and vice versa. Okay, so it's the same thing here on investment. Okay, if company expect that interest rate, okay, if firm companies expect interest rate to go up in the future, okay, they will if they expect an increase in expected future profits boost firm investment, which increase aggregate demand. Okay, and then AD curve shift to the right. Okay, here is what it means that if interest rate goes up, okay, investment will tend to go down, okay, and AD will also go down. So interest rate means the cost of borrowing. Okay, for the company, interest rate means if you want for a company to make investment, usually they will borrow money from the bank. Okay, they will get capital from the bank. So interest rate goes up means the cost of borrowing will increase. So when interest rate goes up, a company will tend to reduce the amount of investment. Okay, and when I goes down, okay, because I is also injection. If you recall from your aggregate demand, the AE topic, you have injection and leakages. Okay, I is a form of injection. When I goes up, AD goes up. So when I goes down, AD goes down. So when interest rate goes down, the cost of borrowing decrease. Okay, so company can make more loans from the bank to do investment. So interest rate goes down, the cost of borrowing become cheaper. So bank company can make more loans from the bank to make investment. So investment goes up, AD will also goes up. Okay, And then you also have changes in the fiscal and monetary policy. Okay, government expenditure, G, and tax. Okay, G is injection, tax is leakages. Injection means money goes in, leakages means money goes out. Okay, so changes in the fiscal policy, for example here, and also monetary policy. So any changes on this, okay, if the government increase expenditure or reduce tax, okay, so this will cause the demand to increase. So let's say, okay, okay, so I think this if you look at this graph here, that sums up the component just now here. Okay, so of course you can read this one quickly. Okay, but you don't need to know everything in detail. Okay, what matters is what cause AD to go up, what cause AD to goes down. Okay, so AD can goes up when consumption increase. Okay, if you recall just now, consumption can increase if you expect inflation to go up, so people will buy more now. Okay, or investment goes up. Investment goes up. How does investment goes up? If interest rate goes down, interest rate goes down, investment will go up, so that will cause AD to goes up as well. And also government expenditure. If government spend more now, for example, now with the COVID-19, okay, people expect government to give out some aid, okay, bantuan, cash assistance or moratorium or whatever assistance to help the public to cover their cost of the I mean the to survive during this COVID-19. So government expenditure increase, aggregate demand will tend to increase. And here you have net export. And X means net export. If export is higher than import, then AD will go up. Okay. If export increase or import goes down, that will cause an X to increase. Okay. Or when if export goes down, import increase, net export goes down, because export is money coming into the economy. Import means our money goes out to the foreign countries. So export is injection, import is like leakages. Okay, so if import is higher than export, so NX or net export goes down, so this will cause AD to go down. Okay, so here you can see just this simple graph here, which is basically just like your AE, C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So when C goes up, I goes up, G goes up, and X goes up, AD will shift to the right. Okay, and vice versa. So the previous slide here is just talking about more a little bit more in detail. Okay, but no need to so as long as when you talk about expansionary fiscal policy, expand means increasing. To increase expansionary means G, government expenditure increase, or the government cut tax. Okay, cut tax means for working people, if you need to pay less tax, meaning you have more money in your account. Okay, or your disposable income will increase. Okay, when you pay less tax, for example, the VAT, I mean like the SST or GST. Less tax means more money in your wallet, so you can spend more. Okay, so contractionary fiscal policy meaning a government reduce spending, okay, or increase tax. Increase tax means you have less money in your wallet or in your bank account because you are paying more tax to the government, so you have less money to spend. Okay, so this is fiscal policy. Monetary policy is the same thing. Okay, decrease in the required reserve ratio. RRR means the reserve ratio. When government reduce, when central bank reduce the RRR, the reserve ratio, meaning bank can lend out more money. Bank can have more money to give out as loan. So that will cause money supply or money demand to increase, and vice versa here lah. Okay. So as long as you understand this simple summary here, so that will be sufficient. Okay, on the AD and function or factors that cause aggregate demand to shift. Okay, and we still got plenty of slides. Okay, but we don't need to discuss too much in detail. Let me see. All of these last few slides, I think not really that relevant. Okay. Okay, so then we have we already talked about AD, aggregate demand. Okay, now we talk about aggregate supply. Okay, supply, we have the short run versus long run. LRAS, LR stands for long run, and then you have also the SR, AS, or the short run. Okay, so so what is AS, aggregate supply? Okay, so we already learned about aggregate demand, which is the component, okay, the demand from the public. You have the aggregate expenditure approach, C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so but what is aggregate supply curve? Okay, it shows this is just a straightforward definition, output supply in the economy and also the price level. Okay, so basically it's still the same thing. You have the price level on the y-axis and the quantity on the, or the GDP on the x-axis. Okay, so the difference between demand and supply. Okay, so it talks about output supplied by all the companies, all the firms in the economy. Aggregate demand, the quantity of output demanded by the public, by the people. Okay, meaning we as consumers, we buy. Okay, just like in the demand and supply topic in the microeconomic. Okay, demand is demand from the people, from the consumer, supply from the producer. So it's the same thing here. Supply shows the quantity of output produced by or supplied by all the firms in an economy. So all the factories, the companies that produce goods, okay, and services, that will make up the supply. Okay, so the price is supply curve is of course upward sloping. When price goes up, company tend to produce more. Okay, so GDP will go up. Okay, so it's the same thing, just like your supply curve in the microeconomic concept. Okay, in the short run, aggregate supply curve has a positive slope, meaning it goes upward here. Okay, upward sloping. Okay, and then and this part here, as the economy approach capacity, the curve become nearly vertical, meaning capacity means the economy has reached its working at full potential, meaning you cannot keep on increasing the number of output. Okay, how much a company can produce depend on how much how big the company is, how many labor you can hire. You cannot keep on continuing to produce output. So approaches capacity means, okay, that is the maximum amount of goods, okay, that a country can produce. Okay, so when the maximum capacity is reached, okay, the supply is almost like vertical, meaning you cannot go up, you cannot keep on increasing and increasing. Okay, so okay, it's not like the curve will continue to be like this. Okay, so the curve will tend to go up and then it starts to become vertical. Okay, because at some point the output will remain the same. Okay, but only the price level will keep on increasing, because in an economy you cannot expect that the quantity can keep on increasing indefinitely. Okay, because it depends on the capacity of the country. Okay, so that's why the classical AS curve is vertical. Okay, meaning that the supply curve is straight line. Okay, so this is with okay, so now we divide according to short run versus long run. Okay, the short run supply curve is the upward sloping. Okay, price goes up, quantity goes up, and vice versa. Okay, and then you can also have the supply curve shift to the right, okay, or the supply curve shift to the left. Here you can see that shifting to the right means can be caused by the cost of labor, harga upah semakin rendah, cheaper. So when the cost of labor becomes lower, the supply curve can shift to the right, okay, and vice versa, means that at the same price level you can produce more, okay, if the wage rate has reduced, okay. But if the wage rate, harga upah increase, at the same price level you can produce less, okay. So that is okay. So shift in supply curve may be caused in here just now, wage rate, okay, you see here, harga upah, okay. Wage changes in the wage can cause firm to reduce output or increase output, okay. Price of non-labor inputs mean not related to wages, okay. For example, material, your stock, okay. And also productivity means if you use, for example, machines, robots, okay, or the ability of your worker to increase output, okay. With you send for training, they learn new techniques to produce in the factory, okay. And also supply shocks can be positive or negative. For example, now COVID-19 is what we call supply shock as well. So that is adverse or negative effect. Factory need to close down, people cannot go to work, okay, due to the lockdown, people get sick, okay. So that is supply shock, because when workers cannot go to work, okay, so firm need to cut or reduce production, okay. But supply shock beneficial means, for example, something good happens to the world, or you can for example, in terms of for example, I think if you recall, last year the price of petrol, the price of oil, okay, reduced significantly, okay, the price becomes so low, okay, and you can pay around 1 ringgit 30 cent 40 cent per liter of petrol, okay, at the petrol station. So that will cause the input price, okay, the cost of petrol become cheaper, so you expect, okay, the cost of certain production will become also low lah. So that could be a beneficial supply shock, okay, for companies. Okay, so so no need to discuss in detail here. So as long as when wage goes up, output becomes lower, okay, and that will cause this graph here just now, lower wage rate, that will cause the supply curve to shift to the right. Higher wage rate, the supply curve, the short run supply curve, okay, remember this is in the short run, shift to the left, and that will cause output to fall, okay. So what happens in detail here, and also productivity. Productivity increase, you can produce more. Productivity decrease, you can produce less with the same amount of labor, okay. So productivity is just like you send people for training, or you use robot or machine. So with the same amount of input, you can produce more output. That is productivity, okay. And supply shock just now, okay, positive supply shock, it will shift to the right, and negative shock will cause the supply curve to shift to the left, okay. So this is the summary here. What caused the supply curve to shift to the right, okay, supply curve shift downward, and this one supply curve shift upward, okay, or to the left. So this is supply curve goes down, supply curve goes up, okay. So here we can skip this part. Okay, so equilibrium is achieved in the short run when both curve intersect lah. So I think this is a very common concept, okay. And whenever any component, whether the demand curve shift upward, okay, or the AD shift upward, or the supply curve shift downward, so you can see this is just like and this is very similar to your demand and supply concept. The only difference is that we put the AD, the demand, we put aggregate demand, but for the supply curve we label as short run. Why does we don't have the AD as SRAD? Because demand curve, this is already in the short run, okay. If you recall in the very beginning when we talk about the demand curve, okay, each point on the curve represents a short run equilibrium in the economy. So the AD is already in the short run by definition, okay. So that's why you don't see the term SRAD here, only SRAS, short run average supply, but there is no SRAD, okay, because this is by default already short run, okay. So the same thing when AD goes up, GDP goes up, and vice, and the rest is you can see directly from the notes from the slide here, okay. The same thing here, just the summary, okay. And then I think if you talk about long run, okay, long run, the supply curve will become vertical. So that's why here just now, okay, when we talk about supply curve reaching full capacity, okay, so it will continue to go up upward, okay, but once you reach a certain stage, okay, of full capacity, okay, so AS cannot keep on increasing. Down, I mean, the quantity will, the Y will reach a maximum point here. So any increase in the price level will not cause the output to increase. It will just be a vertical. So that means you already you're already in a long run condition. So long run means the supply curve will be vertical. Okay, LRAS. Okay, short run supply curve, it can be upward sloping, but for long run supply curve, it will be vertical. Vertical means you cannot produce more output at any price level. So even though the price goes up, okay, but the quantity will remain the same. So this is long run supply curve intersect with the aggregate demand. Okay, so this is long run versus short run graph, okay, compared to short run graph lah. Okay, so so that is in terms. So the rest I think we don't need to discuss too much. Okay, the rest is just whether government increase or decrease. I mean whether what can cause AD to goes up or AD to goes down. Okay, but it will be the same. Okay, the main thing is from this chapter, okay, you need to understand what can cause the supply curve to shift downward or to shift upward, and also the same thing as for demand, what can cause the demand curve to shift downward or upward. Okay, so as long as you understand this the difference between the two, it should be enough, okay, for chapter 14. Okay, anyway, okay, on next Thursday, our last class for this semester, we will do some revision on maybe the last three topics, which is relevant for your test on the coming Saturday. Okay, and yeah, so that will be the plan on Thursday. Okay, so I think that is that's it for today. So I'll see you next